Namaste to all of you. A very warm welcome to this evening's Zoom call. Like always, we have one distinguished speaker amongst us today, Mr. Francois Gautier. Pragya Bharati is not new to him. He is not new to us. He's been with us earlier. In fact, he's a recipient of Pragya Puraskar. He's one of the distinguished Indologists, if you want to call it that way. We have honored him for the great work that he's been doing. And he got his inspiration from Aurobindo in Pondicherry. He lives in Pondicherry. He is a French Indian. We all know he is more Indian than most Indians, I would say. And he's relentlessly fighting for, the Indian causes, the Hindu causes. And we are so proud of him, and we are really grateful to him for having started the museum in Pune. We all know what work he is doing. The Indian Holocaust, the Hindu Holocaust, he has been documenting it. And then ultimately he brought it into the form of a museum, Shivaji Museum in Pune. He worked for Figaro. I can't pronounce the French words, probably I'm pronouncing it wrong or right. He writes for columns for Rediff, many Indian journals and magazines he writes. New Indian Express, Times of India, and many others, Rediff and other things. And then he is, factmuseum.com is the place where you can go and visit the work that he's doing. No Indian till now has thought about really a Holocaust museum. This is what François ji has given to Bharat. And we are so proud of him for what he has done. He is actually portraying the heroes and heroines of Hindutva, of Bharat, in showcasing in this. He has written several books. The French books, I can't pronounce it. Probably he will be able to tell us. And then In Defense of Billion Hindus and Hindu Power in the 21st Century are a few of them that he has spoken about, he has written about. And today he's going to talk about distortions in Indian history, which has led him to take a decision and work relentlessly to start this museum, Shivaji Museum. It's named Shivaji Museum, but it focuses on the Hindu Holocaust and projecting the right, true history of India, its survival, its fight for its dignity and place. Friends, we are very honored to have him today. Let's listen to him, and then we can ask him the questions after that. Unfortunately, he has to leave early. He will be leaving at around 6:35, 6:40 he will leave. So after his talk, I would request all of you to be extremely brief in your questions. Let's not go hit around. He knows the subject. Just ask the question straight. Quickly, we'll go through the Q&A so that we can wind it up enough in time for him to go for his next call in the USA. Thank you all. François ji, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. So I go back a little bit in the past. When I came to India at a very young age, I was, like most Westerners, very ignorant about India. And in fact, I landed first in Pondicherry, where I met the mother who was Sri Aurobindo's companion. Today is Mother's Day, so I would like to have a special thought for her. The mother of Pondicherry was French. She was a great yogini, and I had the privilege to meet her. I just had turned 19, and I saw this old lady. I entered the room. There was an old lady, old bent, and then I knelt. I was told I should kneel in front of her, and I knelt in front of her. And she, she slowly rolled her eyes and looked at me in the eyes, and it was an absolutely incredible experience, of being spiritually uplifted, of seeing someone look into your deepest self. So, of course, I stayed there and I started reading Sri Aurobindo. Now, unfortunately, today, Sri Aurobindo doesn't have the place that he deserves, because first he was the first one to fight the British, long before Mahatma Gandhi, long before Nehru, long before all the others. In the early 1900s, Sri Aurobindo, who also, like me, had a westernized education, came back to India, felt that, that India's soul was calling to him, and started writing as a journalist. And eventually, Sri Aurobindo, in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, said that the British should be kicked out by force if necessary. That he was not a non-violent man, and actually his brother Barin started manufacturing bombs in the cellar of Sri Aurobindo's house then in Calcutta. Sri Aurobindo was arrested twice. And when he was supposed to be arrested again, he fled to Chandanagar and eventually settled in Pondicherry, where he became a great yogini and started, talking about the future humanity, what he called the supramandal. Anyway, so I started reading Aurobindo, and I'm very grateful for that, because when I began freelancing in the late 80s, of course, Pondicherry, is an old French colony, and it's not really India. It's a bit like Goa or Srinagar. You can stay there for 20, 30, 40 years. In fact, I know people who have stayed 40 years in Pondicherry, Westerners, I'm talking about Westerners, and they have no clue about India. So when I started freelancing, I actually started freelancing in Kerala. I was also a photographer. I started doing a photo feature on the Kalaripayat. I don't know how many of you know about Kalaripayat. It's a wonderful martial art, which went to Japan and China and became Kung Fu and became karate. So I had seen a BBC documentary. I was interested. So I went to Kerala and I started having the taste of India. I met people, because the Kalaripayat was a village martial art. It was not only a martial art, it was a philosophy, it was a way of life. The people the Asans who taught, Kalaripayat were also doctors, Ayurvedic doctors. So it was a whole package, and I started getting the feel of India. And these people were simple people. They used to give their time free after work, in the evening, they used to teach the village children. And I met a wonderful master. And I felt, I am a Westerner, I'm a white man, I'm very ignorant, and these people accept me, they welcome me, they're so nice, so kind. So I started feeling that this knowledge was in the people of India, not in the cities, mind you, or not in Delhi, because Delhi is a place where this knowledge has mostly disappeared. But the knowledge, the kindness, the spirituality was there in the people of India. So when I did go to Delhi as a journalist, I had this taste of India. I had this taste that there is a knowledge, which is in genes of people. It's not like, the Christian, they say, I have to be good, I have to do charity, I should not kill, I should not steal. But these people that I met in Kerala, they had the knowledge in the gene. They were passed on by, by generation of, people behind them, of yogis, of sadhus, and it was in the gene. So in Delhi, I had this inkling that this knowledge is there in India, but my eyes were only opened when I went to Kashmir. In the late 80s, Kashmir started boiling up. The ancestors of the present Hizbul Muhadin were the GLK people. And I was there in the beginning. I started reporting first for the Swiss paper, then for the larger French paper. And I saw, my own eyes, what Islam can do to people, to innocent people, because the Kashmiri Pandit, the Hindu Kashmiris, whatever their faults, they were innocent people. They had not done anything. They had not fired a bullet. They had not, made any event. They were just chased out of Kashmir because they were from another religion, And when Benazir Bhutto, whom I had interviewed twice, made a cry, she made a speech when she said, Hazan Kashmir, and the whole of, on a Friday, the whole of Kashmir, all the mosque, all the mullahs started telling the Hindus, get out now, you'll be killed, and 350,000 Hindus, in a few months just became refugees in their own country. So this opened my eyes. This was the second input. It opened my eyes, and I started looking at Indian history. I started looking at Indian history. Till then, I didn't have much interest. I knew about the cliches. I knew about radio clipping. I knew about, some books like The Wonder That Is India. But they were mostly, background knowledge. But then I started looking at Indian history. And the first person I looked at was Aurangzeb. Because Aurangzeb was associated with Kashmir, because, Aurangzeb was, the enemy of Shivaji Maharaj, whom I admired because I thought he was the Napoleon of India. So then I started, studying Indian history, and I realized through Aurangzeb that Indian history has not been written as it happened, but mostly as the British saw it. Mostly as the British then, in 1947, Mr. Nehru, for good and bad reason, decided that there was no need to change anything. neither the education system, nor the political system, nor the judiciary system, nor the history of India. So actually what the British had written got transposed up to today, because today nothing much has changed. There are not many of us who challenge the view, of the British on Indian history. That the Vedas were composed maybe 1,000 years before Christ, that, Ashoka was the great emperor, that Akbar was the greatest, emperor, that the independence of India was won solely by Mr. Nehru and Mr. Mahatma Gandhi. Nobody has challenged that, really, nobody. I mean, the few voices who challenged it were not mainstream voices. So I started writing articles. In those days, I wrote in the Indian Express in Delhi. Then there was a paper in Bombay called Blitz, which was run by a gentleman called Mr. Karanjia. I think he had also a magazine called Blitz. He had few magazines. So he had a paper, and he actually took interest in me and asked me to write a column for him. In those days, the editor was a gentleman called Sudhindra Kulkarni, who became eventually Mr. Vajpayee's right hand. When Mr. Vajpayee became Prime Minister, he called Sudhindra Kulkarni from Bombay, and Kulkarni became Mr. Vajpayee, counselor and right hand. He was a very powerful man. I used to meet him in the South Block, and even ministers, would bow down to him. He was a very powerful man. Unfortunately, later, he changed his little bit his stance and became different. He's back in Bombay today. Anyway, so Karanjia, I wrote a series of articles. There was a time of Ayodhya. Very few people, contested the idea that Ayodhya was a black moment for India, the blackest moment of independent India. I was one of them. I wrote extensively in Blitz about Ayodhya, that it was a deserted mosque, that even the Muslims are not using it, that it was built. British archaeologists that said that it was built over several remains of not only Hindu but Jain and Buddhist temples, and that nobody died, and that after that the revenge of Muslims of Saudi Arabia, of Bombay, was terrible, and so many people died. Anyway, so I wrote that, and then there was another gentleman called Sitaram Goel who read these articles and contacted me. It was my first book, the first book I wrote, and he asked me whether I would like to publish with him. He had a publishing house called The Voice of India. I think it still exists today. And he asked me, would you like, he must have written me a letter, because in those days there were no mobiles or even emails. So he must have written me a letter, or maybe called me on the phone to ask me whether I would like to write a book compiling my articles on Ayodhya, on Kashmir, on Aurangzeb, etc. So I agreed. This was my first book, but I told him, look, I would rather write a book from scratch, and rather than put my articles together, it would be more interesting if I write a book from scratch. So this is the first book I wrote. It was called The Wonder That Is India, because there's a classic of on Indian history called The Wonder That Was India, written by an Australian man, Mr. Basham. And though Mr. Basham praises India, like many Indologists, such as Max Muller, he would say, oh yeah, but there was something wonderful, but also Indians are very illiterate, and and they're fundamentalists and this and that. So I wrote this book called The Wonder That Is India. And of course, there I talked about Aurangzeb, I talked about Ayodhya, and I started, again, looking at Indian history. Then the second turning, I should say, in my, because I'm not a historian, to tell the truth. I'm a guy who came to India by accident. There was a caravan of cars driving from Paris to Pondicherry, and I wanted to go around the world. So I decided that I would join this caravan of cars, come to Pondicherry, and from Pondicherry proceed further, towards Southeast Asia, Japan, America, and come back after a year, finish my studies in France, settle like my parents wanted me to settle. But we drove to Paris. It was a very adventurous, I've written a book in French about it. It was very adventurous. There were 5 cars, and we drove from Paris. We started from, I was living, my parents were living near Napoleon's tombstone. I don't know how many of you know Paris. There's a place called Les Invalides in Paris where Napoleon is buried, and there's a huge complex of museums and famous people are buried there. So my parents were living just next to it. And the caravan of cars started from in front of Les Invalides. So we drove through many countries, through Turkey was a big revelation for me, because from Europe you come to the east, and Istanbul is a very fascinating place, and then crossed Iran and Afghanistan, Pakistan, and from Lahore we drove to Delhi and landed in Delhi. And my first night I spent in India was in the Sri Aurobindo ashram in Delhi. Now, in those days it was a small, now there's a huge school called the Mother School. I don't know how many know the Mother Schools in Delhi. It's a huge complex, many buildings. But in those days there was a small house, that's all there was, and there were fields still. And I didn't know anything about India. I'd never read about India, actually. I was not interested in Indian spirituality. I had read Tintin. I knew about fakirs. I knew about, sacred cows, like all Westerners. I was very ignorant. But my first evening in India, I had a book of Sri Aurobindo called The Life Divine. And I climbed on one of the vans. We came with 3 cars and 2 vans, Citroën vans. And so you could climb on the van and have a view of the countryside. As I said, there were still fields, and it was the evening, there was sunset. It was very peaceful and very beautiful. And, like India gets very quiet in the countryside in the evening, people are coming home, everything settles down. So it was like that. And I opened the book, on one page, and I read a few lines, and I felt that I'd come home. This was my home. Now, mentally, I can say today, because of past lives, but in those days I was very innocent, and I just felt that I have come home, and there is a knowledge here. There's a very ancient knowledge which will, teach me, which I will, enrich my life, and I will stay. And I even the intuition that I will defend my life for the rest of my life. I will defend India for the rest of my life. So that was my first night in India. So to go back to my third input, it was Pune. So I went to Pune. My wife and I are art of living teachers. We teach pranayama courses, both in French and in English. And so I was teaching a course in Pune alone. It had been organized. It was a little bit outside Pune in some Jain, Jain compound and Jain ashram. And of course, I knew about Shivaji Maharaj. As I said, I admired him. I thought he was a Napoleon of India. I thought he was a great guy. I had read about him. I had written about him, that he stood alone against the most powerful emperor of the day, Aurangzeb, the most powerful emperor in the world, because Aurangzeb was then had the most powerful army, the latest technique. He was a very meticulous, very intelligent emperor. So I knew about Shivaji Maharaj. I admired Shivaji Maharaj. So I thought, after my course, I had some time before my flight. I thought, let me go and see a museum about Shivaji Maharaj, because he's a great, one of the greatest warriors. He's like what Napoleon is for us in France. So I told my driver, take me to the main museum. I don't know how many of you know Pune. So he took me to the main museum, which is called the Kelka Museum. Recently, recently a year ago, I met the Chief Minister of Maharashtra and showed him the progress of the museum. He was very impressed. And he said, okay, I'll give you some money from the Chief Minister's fund. And then I had to meet his bureaucrats. And one of the bureaucrats who was the secretary of the Archaeological Survey of India, which is one of the most corrupt ever, institutions in India, which has sat for 70 years, on the fact that most big mosques in India are built on Hindu temples, and suppress this information. So this guy told me, oh, but you're not a museum, you have no artifacts, you are not like the Kelka Museum. So anyway, I went to the Kelka Museum. Of course, it was a very rich museum with a lot of artifacts. There was not a single exhibit on Shivaji Maharaj. There was not a single exhibit on Shivaji Maharaj. Because it's complicated, some of you probably don't know about it. In Maharashtra, the NCP, the Congress, has divided the Maharashtrians, who most of them are followers of Shivaji Maharaj. I'm talking about the Hindus Maharashtrians, between Brahmins and upper caste, who are followers of Shivaji Maharaj, and Dalits and lower caste, who are also followers of Shivaji Maharaj, but often have converted to Buddhism, and also followers of Ambedkar. So the NCP, to boost its electoral, vote bank, has divided these people. And every year during Ambedkar's celebration, Ambedkar was a good guy actually. He was a true Hindu. You have to read what he said about Islam. You have to read what he said about so many things, which are still very, very apt today. So anyway, because of Shivaji Maharaj has become politically very touchy in Maharashtra, very touchy. So anyway, there was not a single exhibit on Shivaji Maharaj. And I felt shocked. I felt absolutely shocked because I knew about the greatness of Shivaji as a warrior, as a statesman, as a man, as a human being, as a vibhuti, because Aurobindo said that Shivaji Maharaj was a vibhuti. He had to do a certain work, which he did in 52 years. It was an extraordinary, but I was very shocked. So I thought, that day I was like, I would say 14 years ago, that day I thought I should do something about Shivaji Maharaj. And then by that time, I had done an exhibition on the Kashmiri Pandit. Because when I was in Kashmir and I saw the Kashmiri Pandit flee, and my heart broke. I remember one day, I was with another Western journalist from a German newspaper called Spiegel. And there was a gentleman called Shabir Shah, I think he's in jail today, who had, they had all the drivers in Srinagar, they were actually informants for the militants. So they would pass to the journalists. Most of them were sympathetic to the militants, It is not much different today. Today you have all the stringers in Srinagar are Muslim because nobody dares to go anymore to Kashmir, to the valley of Kashmir, I mean. So in those days, it was the same, the drivers were the one who gave you information. So the driver told us, Shabir Shah, who was under house arrest, has escaped, is going to surface in the old Srinagar. So all the journalists were rushing there. And in those days, Mark Tully, unfortunately, though he's a good man, unfortunately has been made a hero. He kept writing in the BBC, kept saying in the BBC, because he was a BBC radio journalist, he kept saying, India accuses Pakistan, of financing, fostering, arming, and sheltering, the Kashmiri militants, implying that it is not true. I knew it was true, but I was one of the only voices who knew that it was true. I knew out of facts, out of intuition, that it was absolutely true that the Kashmiris used to go from the Indian Kashmir to the Pakistan side of Kashmir, there get trained, get weapons, get money, and come back, being infiltrated back, back in India. So I knew it was not true. But anyway, he was a god, Mark Tully was a god. He was venerated both by Western journalists. In those days, CNN was starting, all the other journalists, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Times of India, they would follow the clue of Mark Tully, who was basically anti-Indian. He was basically an anti-Indian guy. And he even had a journalist with him, a Kashmiri Muslim journalist, who would inform the militants. Once he was arrested by the army, and Mark Tully was a very powerful man, made such a racket that he was released eventually. I don't know what happened to him. Anyway, so that day, the drivers told us, let's all go to, to the old Srinagar to meet Shabir Shah and interview him. And everybody trooped. In those days, there were only ambassadors. There was curfew mostly in the valley of Kashmir. I spent my whole time in Kashmir under curfew. Actually quite beautiful. I don't know how many of you have been on the Dal Lake. There's so many people, but in those days, I would be on the Dal Lake alone. I would take a boat, and all around the Dal Lake, there would be, army people, and I would be alone on the Dal Lake. It was quite beautiful. I've not been back to Kashmir after that. So, but the day before, there was the last Hindu temple in Srinagar, which had been attacked by the militants. It was on the Jhelum, on the border of the Jhelum River. So I decided to go there. Instead of to go to Shabir Shah, I decided to go there. And there I met some pandits who had stayed behind, although most of the other pandits had gone, who had stayed behind at the risk of their lives. And I was very touched by their story. And I decided that day in Srinagar that I should do something for them. So I did my first exhibition on the Kashmiri Pandits. I mounted it, with the help of the Indian government. Mr. Advani was then the the deputy prime minister. He helped me. And we opened it in Habitat Center in Delhi with Sri Ravi Shankar, who was very supportive of my initiative. And then Mr. Advani came, Dr. Karan Singh came, the head of the human rights came, though he was very, he was very like non-committal. So I opened that exhibition, and after that I did several other exhibitions. I did one on Aurangzeb, of course. Now I have to say something about Aurangzeb because this was one of my important exhibitions before Pune, before I came to Pune. And I contacted, through the Simla Institute of Advanced Studies. I was told that there was a professor of Indian history in Jaipur called Mr. V.S. Bhatnagar, who was a retired head of the university. And I was told that he was an expert on Aurangzeb and Shivaji Maharaj period. So I went to meet him in Jaipur. In those days I had a lot of energy, and I still have, but I travel a lot. So I went to meet him in Jaipur, and I asked him, would you be the researcher on an exhibition on Aurangzeb? And he told me, actually, Aurangzeb was a very meticulous emperor. Every time he passed an order, whether it was to raise a temple or to kill Hindus or to trample them and to pass the jizya tax, he would have the order written in Persian and then stamped with the imperial seal. And all these orders are preserved in Bikaner. Bikaner was also in Rajasthan. There's a very important archive in Bikaner. I told me, all the orders are there in Bikaner. If you can get me permission, I will go there with my people, scan them, translate them into Hindi and English, and we can use this to mount an exhibition. So in those days, there was that lady, Sindhya Raje. She was the chief minister. And her mother knew me. Her mother, who died many years ago, knew me and admired my books, especially the books by the Voice of India. So I went to her and she gave me permission. She told the cultural minister that, let this archive be open to Mr. V.S. Bhatnagar. So we went there to Bikaner. My professor went there, and actually the person in charge of the museum was a Muslim gentleman who told him, of course, you can have access to them, but that it's been there since 70 years, and no historian has come to see them, because actually Aurangzeb is, you don't have to write anything about Aurangzeb, you just have to see his orders. So this is what we did. We selected some of the firmans, it's called firmans, the orders, the edicts. We got them translated, and then we got a team of painters. I got a team of painters in the ancient miniature style to reproduce what these orders were saying. So suppose, for instance, there was an order said that the Mathura Krishna temple had to be raised, and the idol, the murtis, had to be buried under the step of the mosque, which will be built on top of this temple. So the order is there. It is not that, all these people like Audrey Trushke or Romila Tapar or Irfan Habib who praise Aurangzeb, couldn't have access to them, because the access is free. I mean, these archives are there. So we did that. I did a very powerful exhibition based only on Aurangzeb firman. So there is a painting in color, miniature style, signed, dated. On the side, there is an order which the painting corresponds to. For instance, there was a French doctor in Aurangzeb's school called Dr. Bernier. He was a French doctor because the French were reputed to be a good doctor, so Aurangzeb had called him to his court, and he became the court doctor, and he wrote a book. When he went back to France, Dr. Bernier wrote a book. And in this book, he wrote that Aurangzeb, when he declared the jizya tax should be prescribed upon Hindus, the Hindus in Delhi protested, and Aurangzeb himself with several elephants trampled upon these Hindus. So Bernier was there, and the order was there. So we did a painting according to Bernier's version of Aurangzeb, his elephants trampling upon the Hindus protesting the jizya tax. So the whole exhibition is like that. In Delhi, of course, many people said, why do you want to recap the past? This is the old Nehruvian thing, Why do you want to recap the past? You're just stirring up communal problems, There is no need, let the past lie. Many people wrote this in the books. The person who was in charge of Habitat Center, cultural events, exhibitions, she never forgave me. I think her name was Dr. Alka or Professor Alka. she's a lady, you know. She never forgave me for this exhibition because she didn't know when I got the permission, you know, she didn't know what I was going to exhibit. She thought it would be, again, something about the greatness of Aurangzeb, the greatness of the Mughals. What's very interesting actually is that my professor, Bhatnagar, you know, I did several exhibitions after him. I did on Shivaji Maharaj, I did on Aliabai, I did on Maharana Pratap, you know. He was a very nice man, he was very knowledgeable. He knew what Aurangzeb had done. But every time I caught him, you know, he would praise Aurangzeb, you know. I would go from Jaipur, go back to Delhi, go back to Pondicherry. I would come back, you know, and I see that the painters have done, you know, the old thing, you know, praising Aurangzeb on his throne, the arts, you know, and, you know, the greatness of this area, the miniatures, you know. And I would, you know, though he was a very nice man, I would shout at him, you know. I said, you know very well what this man has done. And again, you're falling back into this habit of praising him. And he would say, yes, yes, sir. And today he's telling me, you know, Mr. Gautier, you were very right. He calls me Professor Gautier, but I'm not a professor. You were very right, you know. He starts stuttering, you know, when I talk to him. He said, you were very right, and it's good. So this exhibition was very powerful exhibition. We had no comments. So we showed it in Delhi. There were no problems. Then I showed it in Bangalore with Sri Ravi Shankar. The present Chief Minister, Yedurappa, inaugurated it also with Sri Ravi Shankar in Bangalore. Again, we had no problem. We showed it in Bombay. Again, we had no problems, though people made the same comments. And then in Chennai, there's a gentleman called the Nawab of Arcot. His ancestors were named by Aurangzeb, and he still has a palace in the middle of Chennai. And he's ranked third in the hierarchy. There's the governor, the chief minister, and then the Nawab of Arcot. He has no power, but he's still ranked. You know, it's an old Nehruvian thing. So he came to see the exhibition because the Hindu had done, you know, something about it. So he came to see the exhibition, and he was very offended by a painting which describes the raising of the Sun Temple, you know, in Orissa. He was very offended. So, and he started shouting, and the next day there was a mosque near the exhibition. People from the mosque started coming and making a ruckus. The chief minister then was Mr. Karunidhi, and his son was Mr. Stalin, who probably is going to become chief minister soon. So Mr. Stalin ordered one of his, you know, brightest policemen, the one who had killed the sandalwood smuggler. I forgot his name. You know, there was a very...
Veerappan.
Yeah, the guy who had killed Veerappan, he ordered him to come and close the exhibition. So this guy came, I forgot his name, no? He had a mustache like this, you know, was very... This guy came, they imprisoned my two ladies, there were two old ladies guarding, they imprisoned, they took them to the police station, they took all down all the paintings, they smashed that particular painting. And then I was in Delhi, I flew the same day, I flew down to get the ladies released. I spoke to that officer, police officer, who was very arrogant, very unfriendly. And it took me 6 months to get back this Aurangzeb exhibition. When I got it back, I brought it from Chennai to Pondicherry. It was all broken. In those days, I used to frame my thing in glass. Now I don't do glass, I do plexiglass now. So I got it fixed in Pondicherry, shipped it to Pune, and it was there lying in Pune. So when I went to Pune, I'm coming back to my story. Just have some water. When I went to Pune, and I was shocked by the fact that there was nothing about Shivaji Maharaj. I already had several exhibitions. Aurangzeb, I had, of course, the Kashmiri Pandit. I had done something on the Hindus of Bangladesh who were persecuted. I had done something on Naxalism. I had done something on Aliabai. So then Sri Ravi Shankar, who always supported me, told me, I have a land in Pune near the airport. If you want, you can put your exhibitions there. So this is how the Shivaji Maharaj Museum started, you know, in a very small manner, with the existing exhibitions. And then every time I got a donation, I would build a small building. You know, I do small pavilions, one pavilion, one exhibition. Today there are 16 pavilions. Then I did a temple dedicated to Shivaji Maharaj, to the mother, come back to the mother and Mother's Day. I did a small temple, Shivaji Maharaj and the mother, and then a video room, and then a library, you know, so it slowly started building up. And I studied Shivaji Maharaj more. You know, my study of Indian history never stopped and is still going on. And I realized that Shivaji Maharaj, again, because of the British, because of the Marxist historians after the independence, has a very little place, you know, in Indian history books. If you see in France, Napoleon, he has a huge place, you know. I mean, of course, he has his mausoleum in Paris, in the center of Paris, so beautiful, so big, you know. But every year there are books, there are films, you know. There are some laws which he made in those days, which are still active in France. So he's very respected in France. But if you see Shivaji Maharaj in India, now, when I did my exhibition on Shivaji Maharaj, I got it printed in Pondicherry. Now, the people in Pondicherry, Hindu people, nice Hindu people, they thought it was Shivaji the actor. When I said, I'm doing an exhibition on Shivaji Maharaj, they thought Shivaji the actor. They didn't know what Shivaji Maharaj. Now, a man like that, you know, who fought with, you know, a few hundred men, the most powerful army in the world. When Shivaji was born, Aurangzeb was, you know, at the top of his, at the pinnacle of his glory, the most powerful emperor in the world, the richest, you know, the most powerful army, the latest weapons, you know, and born Shivaji Maharaj, you know, with a few hundred men, hardly any weapon, just his wit, his courage, his intuition. When he died at 52, the Mughal emperor had started to collapse. And in fact, one of our paintings, you know, Aurangzeb, you know, because we didn't want to put any hate, we showed Aurangzeb writing his will. Now, Aurangzeb wrote his will by hand himself. And in his will, he said two things. He said, the greatest mistake in my life was to let Shivaji Maharaj escape from Agra. I don't know how many of you know how Shivaji Maharaj escaped from Agra, but it's extraordinary. In fact, I've been trying to make a, you know, video game, online video game with how Shivaji Maharaj escaped 7 layers of security. You know, it's absolutely incredible. And then he went, you know, the other way that he was expected to go all the way around, and then came to his mother, you know, and prostituted himself at her feet. It's an epic story, you know. So anyway, so Shivaji Maharaj, great man, you know, hero of India, you know, because of him, the culture in India, you know, from Bombay till Kanyakumari has been more preserved. You know, I keep shuttling between Delhi and Pune and Pondicherry. You know, when you come in the south, you know, it's everything is more preserved. People are more gentle, women are more protected, you know, temples are survived more because of Shivaji Maharaj. Because this man with 300 people, a few lieutenants, you know, he put the most powerful army in the world, you know, at his feet, and he conquered everything. He came all the way up to Jinji, you know, extraordinary man, but again, not revered. In some books, he's taken as a plunderer because he plundered Surat, which was justified, you know. So the whole of Indian history is like that. I have finished a book now, a new book in French. It's translated into English. It should come out this year. It's called An Entirely New History of India. And in this book, I have demolished many myths about Indian independence. You know, I have propped up Aurobindo and Tilak, you know, we were the real heart of, it's because of them that India became independent, you know. Gandhi just finished what was started, you know. And the British, you know, after the Second World War, they were bled, they had bled India, and themselves were bled dry by the Second World War. So they were in a haste to leave India. One of the criminals is Lord Mountbatten, which has been praised, you know, by whole history books, and books have been written about him, you know. This guy, you know, left India in haste and left a big mess, you know, the partition, you know, the massacres of Hindu in Calcutta and all over India is something that Mountbatten should be accounted for. So I have written this book and I've demolished many myths. One of them is Alexander the Great came to India, conquered the whole of India. And actually, if you read properly, you know, the Greek books of that time, you know, the testimonies, you know, in India, he had a lot of time. He had a lot of tough time. He encountered tough armies. He himself admired a lot India, the philosophy, the people, the sadhus, you know. He was wounded and he died he was wounded in India and he died from this wound. So the Western perspective of Alexander the Great, you know, being the, you know, conqueror of India is totally false. And then you have Ashoka, you know, Nehru chose Ashoka because he was Buddhist. So Buddhist is politically correct. Even today, if you're a Buddhist, I mean, I love the Dalai Lama. I'm a great admirer of the Dalai Lama. But in the West, you know, Tibetan Buddhism, which actually much more intricate, much more occult, much more ritual than, you know, Hinduism, you know, is accepted. Even the Pope accepts it. But actually, if you study Tibetan Buddhism, it is very ritualistic. It is very complicated. You know, Hinduism is the philosophy of Hinduism is so clear. You know, Advaita. You know, it's so mental in some way. You know, but Buddhism isn't. You know, but it's politically correct. So the same thing is true about Ashoka. Ashoka converted to Buddhism because in those days, the Jain and the Buddhists were in competition. Very few people know that actually, that Jainism and Buddhism were in political and sometimes in physical competition for the attention of the kings, of the emperors, you know. So Ashoka played that. He played this and he became a Buddhist, not because he was, you know, horrified by the battlefield, but because it was and he was actually a very, very cruel man. There are many testimonies of his cruelty, of burning Jains. You know, there was a particular sect of the Jain, and he would burn entire families alive in their home. So a very cruel man. So history needs to be, you know, said properly. Akbar may have been the best of the Mughal emperors, but he himself was also a very cruel man, at least in his youth. You know, he murdered 30,000 Hindus in Chittor. You know, there's a great satire that happened there also because the women, the girls knew that if they were taken prisoners, they would be raped. They would be taken as slaves and become the players, you know, of minor soldiers. So they just threw themselves in the fire. You know? So history needs to be said as it happened, not as it has been written. So my book, which will come out soon, you know, is about that. My museum is about that because I realized that books have a limited life. You see, articles have a very limited life. Even with internet today, there are some of my articles which are still floating around. But anyway, an article has a limited life. A book has also a limited shelf life, you know, unless you're the Bible or Harry Potter, you know, your book has a 2-3 years shelf life and then it disappears. But the museum stays. So this is why I've done that museum. And let me tell you that it's been a very, very, very difficult task. And often I'm a defender of Hindus, but I have often regretted that I started this museum because the amount of resistance, hostility I have encountered, you know, the financial problem because the museum is entirely dependent on donations, you know, it's been very, very difficult. But I still know that my books, you know, I don't know how many books I will leave behind me or how long will last, but this museum should stay. And if it does stay, you know, it'll be something in stone and artifacts, you know, that will survive me because this is what museums are like temples, you know, it is about knowledge. It is about your children knowing about their own history, the good and the bad, you know, the true, the good and the bad and the true, you know, and Indian history is so vast, so ancient. There are so many beautiful things. There are so many warriors. I'm doing now a series on women warriors of India. There are so many of them known, like the Rani of Jhansi, Aliabai, and also unknown. You know, there's so many of them. You know, Chennamma. You know, Chennamma was an extraordinary woman. You know, so I'm doing an exhibition on Chennamma. I'm doing on Tarabai. I'm doing, you know, so many of them. So if you show Indian students, because Indian students are unfortunately very ignorant about their own culture. The education system today only makes them good for export. Are you getting what I'm saying, all of you? You know, yeah. Even under the BJP, after Mr. Vajpayee, you know, 10 years of Mr. Vajpayee and now 8 years of Mr. Modi, you know, nothing has changed. The education they get in India only makes them good for export, and they're lost to India. They have no clue about Kalidasa, one of the greatest poets ever. They have no clue about Shivaji Maharaj, about Maharana Pratap. Maharana Pratap was the only Rajput who fought the Mughals. All the other Maharajas, they gave their daughters, they gave money to the Mughals. All of them. All of them. Only one fought the Mughal, and he fought Akbar, mind you. Maharana Pratap fought Akbar, and Akbar desperately wanted to be friends with Maharana Pratap. And he kept sending letters to Maharana Pratap, no, come, we'll talk, we'll be friends, you know, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. Maharana said, no, you're a foreigner. You know, today that thing is lost, you know. Shivaji Maharaj also considered Aurangzeb as a foreigner, as an invader. Today, the Mughals are praised to heaven. I mean, forget about Audrey Truschke and Westerners and Indologists in India. Indians think that it was the golden time of, of Indian history. So it has been my task to, defend this ancient Indian history, to prop up what people call Hinduism, which is a very ancient spirituality, very ancient knowledge, which has survived today, the only knowledge that has survived today in the world. All the other knowledge that were there in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in Greece, have been wiped out mostly by Islam or by, Christian armies. I think the only knowledge that survived today is called Hinduism, but actually it's a very ancient knowledge, which gives a way of life, which gives a meaning to life, which explain, why you die, why you're born, what is an avatar, what is karma, what is dharma, what is duty, So it is very precious. The first night I came to India, I touched that knowledge. I had the intuition of that knowledge. I had, light of that knowledge, and it's kept with me since then. And this is why I'm doing museum, and this is why I'm writing this book about Indian history. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Gautier ji. That was a wonderful, activity that you're doing, which normally it should have been done by people of Indian origin. Your passion for India and your study and the kind of work that you're doing, every Indian is really proud of you, and we salute you for the great work that you're doing, sir. I'm sure all of us in this group and the contacts elsewhere would be, taking time out whenever they go to Pune. In fact, they should go to Pune just to see this museum, the efforts that you're doing. We're all there to support you, sir, to the extent that we can. Thank you so much. Maybe if I could ask you a couple of questions, how are you able to get artifacts other than, the farmans that you have taken? Is somebody giving you any artifacts related to Shivaji or
no,
actually
no, artifacts cost a lot of money. I mean, there would be, things about Shivaji Maharaj which might be for sale, but I did paintings mostly, because first I think that painting is a way of showing things in an artistic manner, so you combine history and artistry. And secondly, because I can still make painting for 20,000-30,000 rupees per painting, where the artifact will cost lakhs, and I get donation. People give 5,000 rupees, $100, maybe $10,000 maximum. So with that, I'm not able to make exhibition, build physical, buildings for my museum, pay the salaries. Every month I have 1 lakh salaries. I have a team of 7 there, electricity bill, AC bill, this bill, that bill. So every month I need to raise, 2-3 lakhs, and now it's a little easier now, but it used to be so difficult, because people think that, Mr. Modi, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, was very helpful. I met him 2-3 times. He heard about this Madras, taking down the exhibition. And so he called me in Ahmedabad, and he was very helpful. So he called himself phoned in front of me a few industrialists, like Mr. Kirloskar in Pune. And all these people, they met me because Mr. Modi had called them, and they're very nice. But in the end, they all told me, look, we give money to charity, to village empowerment, to health, but we don't give to a museum made by a Frenchman. So I have never got any money really from big money. And as I said, when I met the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, he was nice, but his bureaucrats thought that my museum didn't fit into their idea of, Nehruvian museums. So mostly I have paintings in that museum. Yeah, mostly I do digital exhibition or painting exhibition. At the moment, I'm doing some painting exhibition. I'm doing a second exhibition on Shivaji Maharaj. I'm doing an exhibition on Chenama, which is ongoing. I'm doing an exhibition on Tarabai, which is going on in Udaipur. And I'm doing an exhibition on Vedic mathematics. So this is a cheaper way, and then I can put them also online, because painting exhibition, you photograph them and you put them online, people can see them. So that's what I'm doing for the moment.
Okay. In fact, Mr. Jagannathan of Swarajya, he was on one of our calls recently. he had said that nobody gets money for good causes in India. He said anybody who is a nuisance value, they pay money to silence you. You can get any amount of money to be silenced. But if you're doing a good positive cause in India, you struggle to get money.
Yeah, sometimes my wife jokes that if I had made a Muslim Islamic center, I would get crores of rupees, crores of rupees. In Delhi, we live near the Islamic center in Lodi Road. So so much money has gone there. So even the BJP never gave money for that matter.
Yeah,
never.
True. I agree. I mean, that system is still continuing. Nothing has changed. The status quo mentality has not changed.
Yeah, although we have registered, we have a trust, we have FCRA, we have income tax exemption in the US, in India, in England, but we never got any money from the government.
Yeah,
that's the way it is.
Yeah, but then I know you said you had inspiration from Mother and then Aurobindo, but then how do you reconcile your native place France versus the adopted place India?
You mean balance my Frenchness and my Indianness? That's what you mean?
Yeah.
So many Westerners, I've come to India, I've loved India and got lost, because you have to keep a certain balance between your, Western atavism, and your love of India. So I'm able to do it. I'm able to do it so far because in Pondicherry, when I go back to Pondicherry, where I write most of my books, I can't say Western way of life, but I can be myself.
Yeah.
I love India, I love Hindus, but I can't become a Hindu. It doesn't make sense. Some people have done it. But I prefer to do it from a distance, and I prefer, though I do consider myself a Hindu. If people ask me, are you a Christian? Okay, yeah, I'm a Catholic born, Catholic educated, but if you ask me what is my religion, I would say Hindu spirituality. This is what I adopted. Every morning we do pranayama, do some hatha yoga, some meditation, we chant, eventually. So yeah, I do practice Hinduism. So I can be, but I don't want to say, I don't want to paint my skin brown, and say I'm a Hindu. I practice, I believe in Hinduism, but I can't, I'm not a born Hindu.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. That is more tough. Somebody who's naturally born is different, but then somebody by conviction taking it up is the tougher part of it.
Right.
Great. I think now let's throw it open for question answer session. Friends, as I suggested, kindly be brief and quick so that we can take more questions. Yeah. Vijay Bahuji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much. I'll be brief. So your earlier books, which is Wonder That Is India, Rewriting Indian History, they are not available in print, neither in digital format. So just quickly wanted to ask you, any plans for digitization of your books such that it can be accessible to larger audience?
Well, if you buy my latest book, which is in defense of 1 billion Hindus and the one Hindu power, it actually takes up much of what has been said in his earlier books, and it's updated, and there is further knowledge because I wrote The Wonder That Is India. I wrote it like 30 years ago. So since then, I have progressed. I have made new discoveries. So it will be better. Eventually, I will talk to the son of Sitaram Goel, who's, I believe, is still looking after the Voice of India, that the books can be digitalized. Actually, it's a good idea. I will talk to him next time I go to Delhi. But if you can buy it online on Amazon, or you can buy it on the Har Anand website. If you buy online, In Defense of 1 Billion Hindus, I believe that it is as good and maybe even better than The Wonder That Is India.
All right, sir. Thank you. That was my question, sir. Pranam, sir.
Thank you. Indira ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, my two things are, one is in West, the museums are promoted most. The Western society actually, in France, in other countries, they have more museums, because the people come and see the museums and they buy tickets. In India, most of the people are hand to mouth and they don't go to museums much. The other thing is, if the government takes over your museum, that will be better, I think. They may promote it better, I think. The one more thing with France is, you are from France. So one more thing with France is a secular country. In that country, usually religion has no place, but yet the religion has place in the cultural form. Whenever they say on France 24 TV about Christmas, they say it's a cultural festival and we follow all these things. They somehow promote the culture of Christianity.
So what is your question, ma'am? What is your question?
Is it nice way to promote Hinduism also that way, Indian culture? It is a cultural thing rather than a religious thing.
Yeah, of course, I mean, through my writings also, I promote, well, as I said, the knowledge, the ancient knowledge that is behind Hinduism. For instance, in the coronavirus, I have written an article and I did a video in the coronavirus in the light of Aurobindo. Now, Aurobindo spoke about asuras, it's a very ancient concept in India. There are devas, there are asuras. Now, asuras are dark forces. Now behind the coronavirus, there is a dark force which makes people, panic, which introduces fear, negativity, dispute. At the moment, the French are, quarreling with each other. The doctors are quarreling, the scientists are quarreling, the media is quarreling, everybody is quarreling. So it is not only the coronavirus, it is not only the virus, the physical virus, it is the dark force that comes behind the virus. And this is a knowledge of Hinduism, that there are dharmic forces and there are adamic forces. So I always try to, pass it on in a more, logical manner, that this ancient knowledge is applicable to everything, including coronavirus. And I think the French people are open to it because at the moment, there is a lot of incertitude in the world. There is a lot of, what is the future? People are going to be scared to go out to meet friends, to take the metro, to take the flight. So this knowledge is needed. This is what Swami Vivekananda said and Sri Aurobindo said, and today many gurus are saying it. The knowledge that is there in India is needed by the world now, especially with the coronavirus. So this is what Hinduism is for me. And I think for the French, if we care to, because Hinduism is very logical. If you read the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads, it is about a logical manner of explaining, something which is beyond us. So if we need to pass it on to the West, including to France, okay?
Yeah, I think François, she's saying, like the French have used, they removed the term religion, but they used culture to promote Christianity. Should we also do it in India? Not use Hinduism as a religion, but say culture of India or something like that.
I got that. It is true. It is true that, in France, though it is a secular country, it's still a very Catholic, it's a primarily Catholic place, but not as strong as America. In America, for instance, the lobby of the Protestant is very powerful politically.
Yeah.
In France, it isn't so much because there was a separation of the church and the state at some point in the revolution. And today, even though, it remains a Catholic country, my brother can come to India and enter a Hindu temple without feeling that he is committing a sin, you see? So in a way it has evolved.
Okay. And she asked another question in terms of, India does not have the wherewithal to visit museums, and should you, give it
but
to
government museums are there, but they're very, they're very dusty and boring, and nobody goes to museum. It's not a culture in India because, again, Mr. Nehru, didn't care much about museum, I think, because he didn't introduce that culture. So I would not like the government to take over my museum because I know that first they'll make it politically correct. They'll remove, once the Dalai Lama came, because I know the Dalai Lama well and interviewed him many times. I'm very fond of him and the Tibetan. So he was coming to Pune for some other event. So he came to the museum. Now the Dalai Lama has an X security, Z security. So that means, before him comes, the Intelligence Bureau, the CID, the CIB, the police. So they came and they saw my Hindu Holocaust exhibition. which is the only exhibition in the world on the Hindu Holocaust, from the Hindu Kush till Mumbai, you know. So we have an exhibition that shows all what the Hindus have gone through. So the police came and they made us remove this exhibition, you know. I mean, and it would be the same if the government takes over my museum. I may have money and, you know, means, but they will remove half of my exhibition. Aurangzeb they will remove for sure, for sure, because it's not politically correct. It is true, you know, but what is true is often not politically correct. So the second part of the question is that no, I'd rather, if the government give me money and give me a free hand, fine. But if they take over the museum, it'll be the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, Indians do pay for money. You see the Gwalior fort owned by the Scindias. People pay exorbitant money to go see palace of somebody who sided with the British, right? But they don't pay a dime to go and see places of real valor in India. We have a problem. I think your attempt should actually spur people to try and look at the true history.
I hope so, But I'm always struggling for money. The only problem is that we are dependent. I mean, if the government was there, it would be easier, I guess. But we're always struggling for money to start new exhibition, new buildings. You know, it's
actually the so-called CSR, you know, the corporate social responsibility, it should include promotion of Indian culture and history. The moment it is added in that, I think they should automatically come. In fact, our chairman Chaudhary ji, Hanuman Chaudhary ji, he put up a proposal that there has to be, instead of CSR, corporate social responsibility, there should be corporate dharmic responsibility.
Yes.
You have to protect the dharma. So he's written many articles on that. In fact, he's a strong proponent of producing this kind of a...
Yeah, and he gave money to the museum several times. I mean, I was grateful to him.
Yeah, true.
Okay, next question.
Thank you, sir. Ranjit Wadiala.
Hello.
Ranjit ji, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Good to see you here.
Sir, namaste, sir. I had the privilege of visiting your museum, I think 2-3 years back. So thank you so much. You know, I literally had tears in my eyes at least a couple of times. So I think I spent around 2.5 hours there. It was a long journey from Pune, but still, you know, it's worth visiting it. Thank you so much once again from the bottom of my heart. I wish that, you know, you'll do a lot more wonders like that.
It has grown quite a lot in the last 3 years or so.
Oh yeah, maybe, you know, I'm you know, actually from Visakhapatnam. I'm not a native of Maharashtra. So whenever I go there, of course, obviously I'll do that, because, you know, I stayed back for one more day just to visit the museum. So it was always on my list of places when I went to Pune for one of the business purposes.
Good.
Thank you once again, sir. So my question actually is, we know that, you know, two people who fought valiantly with the foreign invaders were, one is Vijayanagara Samrajya, the Sri Krishna Devaraya, and second is Shivaji Maharaj. So I'm not sure, you know, whether you have studied Sri Krishna Devaraya or not, but you have studied Shivaji a lot. So Shivaji must have did something right, which his predecessors did, because the power equation between Shivaji and Aurangzeb is so vast. Unless he is a genius, he wouldn't have, you know, actually won over him. I mean, he almost won over him. But but what happened previously was, you know, the power balance was not so tilted. You know, in many of the cases, the Indian kings had almost the equal power, or, you know, they are better of their enemies. But still, we lost to them. So, what is that Shivaji Maharaj did right and his predecessors did it wrong?
You mean compared to Vijayanagar?
No. Compared to everyone else, because, you know, when the Muslims invaded India, so the power balance was not so much tilted against us, right? You know, but when it comes to Shivaji Maharaj, he is almost like, you know.
No, that's a very interesting question. That's a very interesting question, because, you know, the brutality of the Islamic invasions, the sheer extraordinary, you know, unfathomable brutality of what Hindus had to suffer since the first Islamic invasion, whether it is the Goa Inquisition. I have an exhibition on, as you've seen, on the Goa Inquisition also. But, you know, Aurangzeb, or, you know, Babur, all of them, you know, it has blunted the warrior spirit of Hindus. You know, if you see today, Hindus are I'm coming back to today because it's a very important factor. Today, Hindus are attacked, they're slandered, they're beaten up, they're killed, they're made fun of, and they do not react, So Shivaji Maharaj was a guy who was fearless. He was in the true tradition of the Kshatriyas. He and Maharana, but there are not many, actually. Aurobindo was later, Tilak was there, but there are not so many. Swami Vivekananda was one. But, throughout history, they become fewer and fewer and fewer because the spirit of Kshatriya of Hindus has been blunted, they've been terrorized, and it is stayed in the genes. So people say, Mahatma Gandhi said Hindus are cowards. He famously said Hindus are cowards and Muslims are bullies. There is some truth in it. But the absolute truth is that Shivaji Maharaj was an exception. And so was Vijayanagar. I'm doing a project now on Vijayanagar. I'm hoping that I've got a sponsor in the US because the first time I went to Hampi, to Vijayanagar, it was like a mystical experience. Have you been to Vijayanagar, to Hampi? You have to go. You have to go.
Yeah, I'd been
because
to Hampi, yeah.
First, it
No,
is,
sir,
it is huge.
I will.
First it is huge. The first thing is that it is huge. Even today, you can see the mightiness of the empire.
Yes.
The refinement, the mightiness. And the second thing is that every statues, the ears, the nose have been cut off. But there are millions of statues. Every statue, the nose, the ears have been cut by the Muslim invaders. The fury, the ferocity was such. So that, you have to be, the spirit of Kshatriyism has to come back to Hindus because there are 1 billion in the world. You have 1 billion in the world. You are one of the most educated, the most successful communities in the world. Wherever Hindus have gone, whether it is Mauritius, America, UK, Canada, they've succeeded. The children top in schools, they themselves are topping. Some of them are, head of multinational companies, but they lost the spirit of standing up for their brothers and sisters, which Shivaji had. And mind you, Shivaji was a truly secular guy. There are stories about his son, making prisoners, daughters and wives of Muslim, chieftain, and Shivaji sending back the wives and daughters with honor and scolding his son and telling him that you don't, take prisoners women and girls. The same thing is true of Maharana Pratap. So they were great secular people in the true sense of secularism, but they were rare examples. They became rarer and rarer and rarer. And today, of course, I'm a great admirer of Mr. Modi, and you can say that he's a modern Shivaji Maharaj of India, but he's one, he's one among, a billion, So we need warriors today. You don't have to be a warrior with a gun, though that sometimes is necessary. It would be sometimes necessary. But we need warriors at least, who stand up, whenever India is belittled at the moment. If you see BBC, CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they keep. I don't know how Mr. Modi seems to have lost also his Kshatriya spirit because he takes it all lying down. The BBC today is mostly Indians. 98% of the BBC staff in Delhi, I know because I'm a member of the Foreign Correspondents Club, are Indians. It would be easy for Mr. Modi to, give back some pride to Indians. At the moment, the whole world is making fun of India, and it, as a defender of Hindus, it saddens me. But the truth is that, Hindus are not standing up for their brothers and sisters, They just, the Hindus in America, there may be 2-3 millions, Every time the New York Times writes a rubbish on India, they should stand up, They should go and confront the journalist and the editor, but they don't because they're too busy making money or having the children in Harvard, This is very sad, The greatest enemies of Hindus today are Hindus, not Muslims, not Christians, not Indologists. The greatest Hindus of Hindus today are Hindus because Hindus are, apathic. They're just selfish, tamasic. They don't care. They don't stand up. And they have the last knowledge, but they seem to not to care about it. So So this is the big problem today. It's how to wake up the Hindus, how to make them again. And so you have to educate your children in school, teach them about Kalidasa, teach them pranayama, teach them meditation, teach them about the great women. Otherwise, they think that India is the rape capital of India. India, the rape capital of the world. That's what, the West is saying. India, proportionally, there are 20 times more rapes in Sweden or France or New York, and that Brahmins are the exploiters, of Dalits. This is what the Western media is saying today, even in my country, in France, that the Hindus are more dangerous than the Muslims, more fanatic, more fundamentalist, more terrorism. But this goes unchecked, you see. I am fighting for it, but I am a one voice, What about the 1 billion Hindus? Where are they? Where are they? And, okay, fine, I'm doing a webinar like this, for 100 people. I don't know how many you are, but what is the point, What difference is going to make unless the Hindus rise up and they do their work? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good, you said, so the museum.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 10 more minutes. Huh?
Yeah. I think Sirisha ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Namaste, everyone.
Yeah.
My one straight question to the speaker, sir. Any suggestions to create interest in youth to recreate pride?
Create interest in youth.
Interest in youth.
Yeah.
And create pride in our youth, and who have lost the fighting spirit over generations. It's not overnight they have lost this. So it's over generations they have lost the fighting spirit. And next, the thing is, I'm afraid of, it's not rare, as you said, the fighting spirit is not rare. It is almost getting extinct these days. And so this is actually, as you have said, rightly said, people have shifted to West, they have lost the warrior spirit, and also it is replaced by cowardice, and they have lost their self-esteem, and replaced by selfishness. Yes, I agree all this. Yeah. So any suggestions to get back all this? It's really hard. I am a lecturer, and these days I find the students more attracted towards the whatever the Western culture, Western music, books, all these things. So that's my question, sir.
So the first thing would to be stop the brain drain. You see, the greatest brain drain of the world, the greatest brain drain of the world, yesterday and today, is that of the Hindu children and youth going to the US or UK, mostly to the US. Used to be the UK and Canada, Australia. So this is the greatest brain drain, and it's still going on. So the first thing you need to do is to stop this brain drain, because the best brains of India go abroad, and then they lost to India, they become westernized. Their children lose Indianness because they're in the contact of Westerners, and they're attracted to Western values. So the first thing would be to stop the great brain drain, and the second thing would be, of course, to educate the youth about their history, about the heroes and heroines, about the Holocaust. But this is not being done, and the more the government waits, the more it is difficult. I remember when Murli Manohar Joshi, whom I knew well and I respected quite a lot, tried to introduce Vande Mataram singing and to try to chant some of the history book. That was like 15 years ago, and the outcry that was there then at that time, But today the Christians in India are more radicalized, the Muslims in India are more radicalized, So it's seems like an impossibility. It seems like Mr. Modi himself doesn't dare. I mean, I have met 3 HRD ministers. I met Mr. Smriti Irani twice. I met Mr. Javadekar, who was a very nice man. I know the present minister who is from Uttarakhand. I met him twice also. They're nice people, but they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything to change the way Indian history is done. And you can have some compassion for them because they're scared. They know that in the moment they try to say that Aurangzeb was a monster, actually, not only to Hindus but to his own people. He had his his son in prison, his father poisoned, you know, he had his brother beheaded, Darashuku. He was an absolute monster. He was a Hitler. You know. So in Europe, Hitler is, you know, is known for what he was. But in India, I don't think Aurangzeb will be ever known as a Hitler, unless there's some revolution. I don't know. There has to be some revolution because the government today is a prisoner of a system established by the Congress. You know, and they have to function in the system, you know, whether it is education, whether it is a minister, they function with the same system that the Congress established, you know, with 7 layers of, you know, of private secretary and, you know, and PS and second PS and peons and second peon and third peon and fourth peon. And so if you want to reach a minister today, I can, because, you know, I'm a journalist, I'm a Westerner, I can, though it takes time, you know. But for an ordinary people, for an historian, it's impossible. Because Mr. Modi function is a system that the Congress created. So unless there is a revolution, and I think the revolution would be to shift the capital away from Delhi to a more central place, you know, and break the bureaucracy, because Mr. Modi is also a prisoner of the bureaucracy. Whatever good reforms he's doing, and he's done so many good reforms, you know, it is, you know, diluted by the bureaucracy. It is perverted. It is, you know, hijacked. So unless Mr. Modi breaks the bureaucratic hold and the VIP, you know, the VVIP, which is there in Delhi, so strong now, you know, even around Mr. Modi for that matter, you know, unless he breaks that, I don't see a solution, ma'am. You know, I don't see a solution because education is remaining the same. And today you're still teaching your children Western value, Western mathematics, Western history. So as a result, you know, they have no root here. They have no root. You know, I had roots. You know, as a Frenchman, I was taught to be proud to be French. I knew about my French poet, the French warriors. You know, I knew about Napoleon. I knew about Charlemagne, all the great writers, the revolution. So I grew up to be proud to be French. But in India, your children don't grow up to be proud to be Indian. Forget about Hindus. They don't be proud to be Indian. So they go to the West and they merge. You know, I have given talks in American universities where there are like 100,000 Indian students. 10 will come up for my talk, you know, 10, 27 sometimes. Recently, I was in Atlanta. I gave a talk in Atlanta University. Thousands of Indian students, you know, on Indian history. 7 turned up, you know. So sometimes I feel it's hopeless, you know, and Mr. Modi is the only one who could do something. Let us see, but it will be a huge task.
Sir, we'll you know, take it offline. I have a document prepared on the suggestion you gave on Delhi. We'll take it offline. I'll take it later. Yeah, Himanshuji, please go ahead. Yeah, I think we are running out of time. You need to be fast.
Yeah, thank you, Giriraj. Thank you so much for inviting Sri Francois Gautier. I don't have any questions because of paucity of time. I probably have a couple of things to say. One, I have visited the museum in Pune, which is run by Art of Living Society, not once, 3 times, because I stay in Pune for 6 months. And I visited Hampi, I visited Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. If time permits, can I read one paragraph from a book called Shivaji, the Grand Rebel, written by Dennis Kincaid?
Maybe we'll share it because it doesn't have time now. We will do it later. You can just share it.
Ask me your question.
No, I didn't have any question. I just want to tell you that I have visited your museum not once but 4 times. I just shared the photographs with Giriraj. Because since I stay in Pune, I make it a point to visit all the forts and fortresses. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Balaji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, namaskar. Thank you. I'm also one of the victims of the Macaulay education and just started realizing how great is my country. And thank you for your insights today. One question, sir. If I have to understand more about my own country, the kind of real history you've been talking about, the kind of work what you've done, and about something about Sitaram Goelji and the others, how do we, as a layman, how do we identify which history book is correct, which author is correct? Because there are a lot of books floating around.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's, you know, I would recommend to read one book. It's called The Foundations of Indian Culture, written by Aurobindo, 100 years ago. Actually, this book was written in response to a British journalist called Mr. Archer, who said that most of Indian philosophy, culture, architecture, paintings was rubbish. So Aurobindo wrote a whole book, and today it's still the foundation of, you know, what India should do in terms of painting, in terms of architecture, how to defend Indian culture. So I would recommend that you tell everybody to read this book, The Foundations of Indian Culture by Aurobindo. You can't go wrong there. You can't go wrong. And this is, you know, I mean, I can say read my books, but this is so much higher than my books because I've been inspired by Aurobindo and by all your saints. Now, you know, online there's a lot of information now. You know, you can say that in the old days, if you need to do something, to know something, you would go on books and archives and libraries, you know, but today you go online, you know, for instance, Tipu Sultan, you know, you go on Tipu Sultan and you'll see there's a lot of information online of who Tipu Sultan was really, including by, you know, British officers, by, you know, Western, you know, writers, by, you know, testimony. So you can get information online. The same thing is true, you know, of everybody. You know, you can get online a lot of information on the Goa Inquisition. You know, I went to Goa before starting my exhibition. I went to Goa. I wanted to see Goa archives, museums. There was nothing left, man. After 10 years of BGP, everything has been erased. The places where Hindus were burnt, the crosses where they were crucified, the places, everything has been erased. And you go to the museum, main museum, there's nothing left. It's as if Indians want to forget about the history, you know? Even the BGP for that matter. So the best source of knowledge is online. Go online, you do Tipu Sultan, you see what is there, you do a clever search, critique about Tipu Sultan, and you'll find there's a lot of material today. So this is the best. And even your children, you can advise them to go online and to see for themselves the truth.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, sir. Anil Sadanandji.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah, make it fast, okay? Yeah.
Sir, now to like the nationalistic idea, I'm not talking about the history or this thing, sir, which you have very clearly told me. My this thing is, if the government do a lot of investment through the, as for industries or infrastructure, can the nationalistic idea can be instilled in the youth and can we preserve our youth to love our country? Like, for example, the government is heading for a 1 lakh crore, but they want to spend between Delhi and Bombay. They want to travel by 12 hours. And
let's please go ahead with the question. Let's not, yeah.
No, or else how do we instill the nationalistic idea?
Yeah. Government will spend where they want to spend. You tell, I mean, you please ask the question, what you want the government to do? Let's be,
I mean, like, instead of spending that huge money, look, can't we just spend some money for the instilling the nationalistic this thing?
I'm sure the government is doing, I'm sure the government is doing a lot of good things. Some of them we don't know about, you know, and I'm sure that Mr. Modi is trying in a roundabout, you know, clever manner to, you know, to change things. But unless you change the curriculum of the schools, unless you stop saying that Shivaji was a chieftain, that Maharana Pratap was a minor person, that, you know, Aurangzeb was a great man, unless you change all that, you're not going to instill pride in your children. So education needs to be changed and the history needs to be rewritten. But, you know, it starts with you, you know. I always tell people, you know, that you can do something, you know, you start an online group, a newspaper writes something which is very wrong. The Times of India writes an article about praising Aurangzeb. You send an email to the Times of India. You ask your friends, 100 of your friends, to flood the Times of India with protests, you know. You can do action. You know, the problem is that people are thinking that let the government do it, but it can start with you. You start online groups. If you're in the US, you know, in the US you see an article or a TV program which is belittling India, you protest. You know, if 1 billion Hindus protest, you know, their voice will be heard. Why is the Jewish lobby so powerful? They're not so many. They're not as numerous as the Hindus. You know, they're 100 times less than the Hindus. Why? Because they have protested. Because they have created all over the world museums about the Hindu Holocaust or the Jewish Holocaust. Because they have written books about what Hitler has done. They have documented, they have been active. They've been proactive. They fought themselves, you know. The Jewish people fought against all the Arabs, you know, surrounding them together, and they defeated them, you know. So they've been proactive. The problem with Hindu is that they're not proactive. They think the government will do it, but it starts with you. It starts with how much you're capable of changing things at your own level, around you with your friend, creating online groups, protesting with newspapers, going necessarily, you do a dharna in front of a, if there is a very hostile paper in Hyderabad, I don't know, Deccan Herald or whatever, you go there with friends, you go and sit and make a dharna, it will have an effect. But Hindus are not doing that, They come to me and say, oh, it's wonderful, François, what you're doing. But I'm only borrowing from your saints, from your seers, from your philosophy, I'm borrowing from them. It's not that I'm saying something new. I'm saying, oh, India is a great country. I love it. I learned so much. I'm so grateful to be here. So I'm defending. But you as a Hindu should do it more than me. Why is it that a Frenchman has to do a museum of Indian history with the Hindu Holocaust? It's not been done before. There are 1 billion Hindus. In India, there are at least 700 million Hindus. Where are they? Where are they?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Okay. Professor Murthy ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Last question, huh? Because it's
5 more minutes, sir. Just 5 more minutes. I leave you at 6:35.
Okay, I'm
Professor
audible.
Murthy ji. Yeah,
Okay.
You are.
I am Professor
quick,
Murthy.
Yes, sir, make it quick, yeah.
Francois ji, I appreciate. I know we are in touch also earlier. I was recently in Pondicherry. By the by, Claude Arpe, who is also in Pondicherry, is also doing some good thing about
Claude Arpe.
Yeah, Claude Arpe.
Yeah, you know, sir. Yeah,
you know him. Okay. My question is, recently myself and General Malik and few people, we visited Pandi ashram, and we had a discussion with the central committee there. And
what is the question, sir? What is the question, sir?
See, what I found, what I asked them is, sir, can we activate the spirit of Aurobindo into the youth, and what is the course of action? Because they are also simply satisfied with the routine management of
Professor Murthy, you see, Aurobindo,
one
of the greatest philosophers. Aurobindo was the greatest philosophers of contemporary India. Is this philosophy taught in Indian universities, in philosophy department? It isn't. He was one of the greatest poets, there are
That's what my question is, because you are doing this work on your own single-handedly since decades, how can we do this to percolate into the youth of this country in a at least semi-permanent way? It can't be a permanent way, because some people will be coming and all that. What is your plan of action? What is your plan of action? How can you percolate this spirit into the present youth?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
No, so I answer that question. You need to change the curriculum. You need to make your children proud to be Indian. You need to have to teach Indian subjects. Indian, like Aurobindo should be taught in philosophy curriculums. You need to rewrite. The history of the independence movement in India, giving the true place to those who started it. So it's a momentous task, but it starts with us. If I, as a Frenchman, can have written books, I'm not a born Hindu, I'm not a born Indian, written books, done that museum, written articles, you can do it. Everybody can do it. It's not that I started with more means than you. I just started like everybody. I was not a journalist, I was not a historian, I was not an Indologist. So I learned, and I studied, and I went on the ground, and I fought. The main thing is that I'm a fighter. Unless you're a fighter, the odds against India, and Hinduism are so big, that unless you're a fighter, even it's a fighter on the, level of mental level, unless you're a fighter, you're not going to have any effect. So there are 1 billion Hindus, if only 10% of them, start on the same crusade, I mean, India is saved, India is, and I do believe, to stay on the positive side, I do believe that India is going to become a superpower. Now with the coronavirus, there's going to be a backlash against China. And now everything is about the economy. Forget about this, everything is about the economy. So investments which are, Western investments which are now with China are going to be, some of it is going to be shifted back to India most probably. So India is going to come up economically, politically, geopolitically. Yeah. But Hindus need to rise, Hindus need to rise to defend their culture. And so my answer is, you have to change the education system. And for that, Mr. Modi needs your collaboration. He needs the collaboration of everybody in India. And I don't think he's getting it. I don't think he's getting that support. You know, he needs that support, and for that, people need to come out. People need to, you know, go online. People need to be more assertive. So the spirit of kshatriyism needs to come back because it's going to be such a difficult task. Okay, everybody.
Sir, one more minute and I'll close you. 6:35. One more minute, I'll close you. Sridhar, I'll take the young lad. Sridhar can ask and we'll close it. I'm sorry, Panditaji and Murthyji, I need to excuse elders. I'm giving it to a youngster. Sridharji, quick, and we close it.
Namaste, sir. Actually, years, centuries, brutalities we had and everything. Still, Hindus try to, you know, discuss so much. They try to intellectualize everything. They push so much spiritual stuff. Instead of, you know, picking up the weapons and try to speak in the language of weapons, they too much intellectualize everything. So much so that, you know, the actual point is lost. So should not be a culture to regard the weapons and try to, you know, every deity, Hindu deity carries a weapon. But nobody really talks about it. No intellectual think tank talks about the regard for weapons, utilization of weapons, and how to defend yourself through weapons and, you know, idea of violence. This is not there. Shouldn't there be a very specific think tank to only improvise this?
Thank you.
Thank you. So what is your question actually?
He's saying, should we not have the think tank which focuses on weaponizing the society?
Yeah, I do believe, you know, I'm a French militant, and I do believe that sometimes, you know, Hindus should be able to, that's what Aurobindo said, that in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, what Lord Krishna said, that, you know, is that sometimes when your country, your values, your culture, your women are endangered, you know, there is nothing wrong with taking up weapons, because even if even if there is a battle and people get killed, you know, the soul, you know, the Atman doesn't get killed. It's only the body that gets killed. So that knowledge has been lost, not only the knowledge of the psychic being, but also the knowledge that sometimes it is necessary to battle. And at the moment, you know, I think it's the real battle is going on, and Hindus should be able to fight. Maybe not physically, but eventually physically. Now, if there is a war, it's going to be between China and India. You know, if there is a war, it will not be between Pakistan and India, because Pakistan, you know, will slowly implode from within, but it will be against China, a very powerful, very dangerous, you know, very ambitious nation, very ruthless. So, you know, Indians need to think about that. You know, if there is a war, will I send my children to fight? You know, will I fight myself? You know, so that spirit of kshatriyism needs to take root again in India. But at any rate, you should fight on an intellectual level now, and this is not happening. Writing to newspapers, writing email, you know, protesting, eventually physically protesting. You know, so much slander is happening at the hands in India itself, at the hand of newspapers and television. You know, so much is happening. When these two sadhus were killed, you know, so much. You know, so Hindus need to stand up. So yes, fight, but you can start by fighting, you know, on an intellectual level. Okay, everybody, it was nice seeing you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
It was a pleasure
Namaste.
having you.
Namaste.
And thank you so much for sparing time to talk to so many people. I know you have to rush through, rush to another program. And we'll be more than glad to have you sometime in future, speak on something else, more specific, maybe some aspects of history, maybe you should talk about. Today was more a general topic, then we'll get into some specifics. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you all once again. And you know, we wish that the great efforts that Francois Gautier is doing, we all are there to support him in whatever possible way we can do. And we take inspiration from him and we do our own battles. Thank you all. Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Namaste.
Namaste.